Hey there, everybody. It's been a little bit. Welcome to the Mythology and More Research Lab. I can speak English. Let's get started.
You say I make you nervous, a tragedy, I'm a beautiful disaster, a reckoning, you wonder how I got this way. You think I'm someone to be saved, someone to clean up and tame. Oh, some things never change, never change. You think I would look pretty on your arm once you cover up my bruises and battle scars, but it always ends the same.
Welcome again to Mythology and More Research Lab, where we get nerdy. My name is Jenna O'Malley. I have a partner in crime here with me. Hello, partner in crime. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, lovelies. I am Mama Maggie Ward, independent author, stroke survivor, migraine overcomer, and I have books. The next Pagosa Stars books will be coming out the 21st of this month. I have a book coming out on June 1st called Darkness of the Devourer, which is book number 12 of the massive Relic of Time War series. And yes, and for Beltane, I am in the Beltane anthology that goes with the Bog Hag anthology to support Quill Cottage charity for small animal rescue. Team Bog Hag, yes. And somebody got back from a con this weekend.
I'm still processing con because I have con crud. I will not say I won't ever plan for a con in a week or less ever again. I now know I can do it. I will say that, and I know what not to do. Hello, Rachel. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hope all is well. Definitely all the love, hugs, and supports along the way. So we're talking about fins, feathers, and more. Do you have slides today, or was I supposed to bring slides today?
I do not have slides.
That's okay. We can coffee chat this.
We're just going to be doing coffee chat and stuff like this. Yeah, so I have the set of tabs that I had researched to have slides. When I started trying to pull them up this afternoon, I was like, where is this group of tabs? Where are all these tabs? Yeah. The curse of April. I think April so far was the worst month of 2025. And all of our preparations for like everything, it's like I have 3 grouped tabs that are now missing. And I'm like, wait. Where are all my bug tabs with the creepy bug cryptids? And where's my horses and goats and things tab? I have horses, goats, elephants, oh my. And I'm like, the face. But anyway, so what we do on this thing for Mythology Lab is we talk about mythologies that are outside what most of our author friends know, because we all grew up on the Greek and the Europeanized myths, those Western European myths, the Greek mythologies. Those are the ones that bleed into all of our stories. And if you look at look at fays and vampires and werewolves, those and witches, those are the myths that get picked up on in story building. But there is such a bigger world out there. There are so many amazing mythologies and mythical creatures that most people don't think about. Now, we started off the whole series with Quetzalcoatl's. We started with snakes because it was the year of the snake. And today's is feathers, fins, and more. So we're talking about things with feathers, things with scales. And Quetzalcoatl is an Aztec or Nahuatl myth called the serpent, the feathered serpent. He was a powerful deity. He is linked to the god of creation, Kublai Khan. And it's basically a giant serpent that has feathers instead of scales. And it is the servant of precious feathers, the healing, dual nature of both the god of heavens and earth. So many different things. And that led us to talking about myths that have changed. And the main myth that all of us know is sirens. Now, we all know mermaids as sirens because Disney and the Europeanized myths that started after the Dark Ages about these half fish, half women. But sirens were not always fish. Sirens were birds. They were bird women. And this idea of these women that had a bird face or women that had wings and bird feet, these were the ones that are spoken of in the Iliad and the Odyssey. It goes back thousands of years before the mermaid myths came. And it's very interesting that the songstress, temptation, almost succubus aspect of sirens were transferred onto mermaids. And so that was something that we talked about. There's so many cultures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about there's several cultures that have mermaids. They're different stories. The singing mermaid was not necessarily a thing. I mean, we have ancient Syria has sculptures of mermaids, 1000 BC. There are stories of one of their goddesses turning into a mermaid to swim in the sea. And they believe that that influenced the Greek and Roman mythology about the Nereids. So the idea that these female creatures in the seas would lure sailors to basically jump to their dooms, is very interesting about the temptation that lonely sailors have out in the middle of the ocean. They hear music, they see birds on a cliff, and they're like, oh, it's a lady and I need lady bits, and they jump in the sea and die. Yeah.
Well, it's also part of the fact in a minute way that for sailors, birds were also often, if you need a feeling for how far you are from land, from shore. So some of them might have been like, oh, yay, I'm closer to home than I think. No, You're not finding your wife tonight, honey.
But, yeah. Well, there's stories about albatross. If an albatross lands on your ship, you need to be ready for a storm because normally they will land on the sea. They will not land on a boat. So, but the thing is these myths that started in ancient Assyria moved into the Greek pantheon as the sirens being these bird-like women and the Nereids being these water spirit sprite things. And then then, of course,
Hera herself being a peacock who liked to hang around water on occasion too, even then.
Mm-hmm. And the way that it moved into these European myths, and then they became these half fish, half serpent, half human. That actually coincides with the time that the Silk Road existed, because in the Ningyo of the Japanese folklore and the I'm going to try to say this right, Mami Wata of African folklore are and deep Africa. We're not talking like up by Egypt. We're talking down far into the deep Congolese jungles. These myths actually brought more of the mermaid myth because we had Selkies. The Europeans had the Selkie myths of the maidens who would put on the sealskin and turn into a Selkie and swim away. These were myths that had happened that were in Northern Europe, but they did not have a mermaid per se until they began getting the influence from the Far East about these half fish, half serpent, half women. And sometimes it was men that came along the Silk Road. And there are Hindi myths about half of these half creatures, and the Asian myths, I mean, there are beautiful rice paper paintings of some of these things that they look kind of like what we would call a mermaid. I'm not going to try to say the Indonesian, the Hindi, the Hindu name for these mermaid creatures, except that they were considered avatars of Vishnu and the great gods, that they survived. And there are some very beautiful pictures. Let me see if I can I share a screen? I'm going to share a screen.
I think you can. And something that one of my former students in a mythology literature course once asked, wouldn't from a distance, even if you have decent vision, couldn't a scale or a feather be confused for each other? And I'm like, depending on the creature, that's a good point.
Well, here's the interesting thing is feathers are actually modified scales, which is why they're now realizing that dinosaurs may not have been scaly like reptiles. They may have been feathered like birds. But this, you can see how beautiful this image is right here. How she just looks, it's this beautiful serpentine mermaid-like creature. And the thing is what did people out on the sea who were probably suffering from scurvy a lot of times, because vitamin C, you see crazy things when you lack iron, which you can't exactly take meat with you on the boat, and taking beef jerky on a boat is a problem because the humidity on the sea will cause it to go bad. You have trouble taking grains with you out to sea because some grains will grow different kinds of fungus that are hallucinogenic, and you have fruits and vegetables, not necessarily something you can take with you out on the open ocean. So you can imagine that people would see things like they would see a dolphin, or when like the settlers moved, when the conquistadors came to Florida, they thought manatees were mermaids.
Because of the way their tails would look like. Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many different mythologies about specifically this shape of sirens or of mermaids. And so when the world began to spread out, that's when these myths began. And this is the Japanese myth. It is a carp with a human head, the Ningyo.
Which makes the Pokemon Magikarp all the worse of an inside joke when you think about it. Because
it really does. It really does. But yeah, this is a fandom site that is on Asian cryptids. So I really enjoy the fandom cryptid sites. It's very interesting. But there are so many different kinds of these half fish, half human things that people reported seeing in the sea. And there are so many different bird-like creatures that people traveling reported seeing. And that's is what we're going to move on to. Is we're going to talk about the Kiniara. The Kiniara are Hindu and Buddhist mythological creatures from Pakistan and India. These are these bird torso, males and females, and their lower torso is a bird. They've got like a lower like they've got wings. They have bird-like feet. They kind of walk with like their back kind of bent like a chicken would walk. And they're like the
bird. They're like a castle, but late into. That's kind of accurate to what a lot of people picture.
Yeah, they're the like bird equivalent of a centaur or something like that. Let me see. Where is? Trying to find the tab. I have a tab open of one. Where is it? Which tab is that? Okay, The Kenyara tab. Why isn't StreamYard seeing this tab? Oh, there it is. Okay. Ha ha ha. Okay. So try to make that the picture on the whole page so you can see it better. But you can see how this image is of this creature that is obviously half bird and half human. And they were, it's a very interesting thing. They were runners, they were messengers.
They're very similar to the like Hermes type, Mercury like myths. They're not exactly like an understated messenger, gopher boy of the gods like Mercury and Hermes are often given, but more like, if you're thinking in tarot, the role of the knight is to be the communicator. They're more like that, a little bit more noble for sure. Notice that the gold that is often used in the statues, I think that and obsidian were the two most common things people would use to make like motifs and things for these creatures.
Yes. And
well.
you can see the similar iconography to the siren bird of Greek myth, there with a Sagittarius with a centaur, but you can see the similarity. And this is because none of these mythologies evolved in a vacuum. People traveled, they took their myths with them, they traded to other countries. And this is how mythology is a living thing. It changes over time. That's why we have a thing now called urban legends. And it's because new mythology is evolving. Now, another thing that we can look into an example of these bird-like creatures that are similar to the mermaid aquatic sirens is you have the harpy. Now the harpy, these poor cursed women, they were considered half bird. They had like a bird lower body. They had bird wings instead of arms. They would screech. They would attack. They were considered to be insatiably hungry, and they were kind of terrifying. They were designated that these, in the Greek myths, the harpies were cursed creatures that were beholden to Zeus. And you really have to wonder if, with Zeus's proclivities toward
Good word choice.
Consent, if these weren't those that resisted them, if these weren't those that hated him, we don't know. Mythologies change. Originally, they were ordered to carry off the daughters of one of the Greek kings and take them to Tartarus. So, yeah, they're part of the monstrosities that Zeus caused to come into existence. So, but the descriptions of harpies tend to be extremely, extremely negative. And it's because the oppression of independent women has existed for literally 3,000-4,000 years. But the ideas of harpies actually carried into modern times. It actually became a myth in Eastern Europe that became related to vampires, that harpies and vampires were woven together. And
I think this is where you get a lot of your myths of vampire versus harpy as which one uses bat form versus which one doesn't. And I would even venture to say that I'm trying to find my tab. Where's my tab? There's the tab. I would even venture to say that this is not unfairly, if you look at comparison to vulture-like birds and their wing construction.
Tearing living, raptors and vultures tearing things apart. And it's very interesting how enduring harpies became as far as a horror mythology, because literally they're talked about in Dante's Inferno. And Faust talks about them. So, and I mean, even as in Victorian literature, harpies are talked about as things to fear and reasons not to go into the woods. And the harpy myth and what was the banshee myths of the Celtics,
yes, very much so,
began to overlap as and the wailing spirit women began to overlap with these Greek originated cursed women,
especially as they took over more Germanic tribes and ran into that, oh, this looks like us concept. My question for you, do you think this is why, and some people are going to hate me for this, don't hate me for this, do you think this is why Morrigan and Hecate are kind of the same but not the same goddess then?
I think what happened was, like, as the Roman Empire expanded, there was the Romanization. Well, Rome conquered Greece and like stole all their deities. And then there was this Romanization of mythology, literally on a global level. Everywhere that Rome went, they took their gods with us, and they're like, oh, you have Morgana. Oh, well, that's Hecate. That's this goddess. And so, no, it's not. No, it's not. But it's the same thing happened. The same thing happened with Christianity, though. When Christianity began to spread, everything began to get Christianified. And gods and goddesses either became demons or saints, depending on their persuasion. So it's a very interesting thing, like all the way back to the Silk Road stuff and all the way back to the Assyrian mythologies, spreading toward Troy and toward Greece and eventually reaching Rome. These myths are pervasive. Now, Egypt has been able to hold on to their own. The ancient Egypt were able to hold on to the Coptic gods. I think they stood the longest independent from this constant rolling of the pantheon into something new, into something relatable. And so, but a lot of these, like the witches of the witch trials, these strong independent women ended up subverted, because in Greek mythology, the harpies were punishers. They were things that punished the wicked, not just doing Zeus's bidding and carrying off the princesses that refused him to Tartarus to be tortured, but they were also responsible for torturing and hurting men who harmed children. Which, if you reach into the Baba Yaga myths, Baba Yaga, not only did she said, they often, she was a stealer of children and stuff like that, but if you harmed a child, Baba Yaga would come for you.
It was okay. It's kind of one of those situations where your older sibling is like, it's okay for me to make fun of you, but nobody else, times infinity in witchcraft. Is the way someone explained it. And I'm like, that's a fair justification.
Yeah.
Just popping in Rachel's comment. The good thing about Ren Fair is you're outside, not enclosed to get crud. See, this is why I'm trying to sign up for more. Unfortunately, where I'm at, the Ren Fair is not open until August when it's blazing, effing hot in Baltimore. Baltimore, why? Anyway, Miranda, one of the characters dream of a scary bird like harpy. I think you need to do more research on that creature. They can, in some cultures, there is a harpy-like being that does relate to very much like being a dream siren. So you're not too far off on that. No, thank you. See, I'll go to PA in October. Baltimore in August? Question mark. No, thank you. At least you
Oh, the humidity.
Yeah, down south are lucky. They have some earlier in the circuit fairs because they're smart people. And unfortunately, Baltimore's like, let's make it right before school starts.
Colorado does their Ren Fair literally in July. So it's like July and August is like the hottest time of the year at altitude. And it's just like you melt every year. You melt every year at Ren Fair.
You're breathing through a mountain of humidity for sure. So,
yeah. But no, there's this idea of sirens, harpies, the kinaras, the Chinese fish creatures.
Their fishing tales are so...
Yeah, these myths, the oldest records we have of these myths literally are carved into the walls of ancient Assyrian cities. And they spread from there. Because if you look up the Muses, if you look up the Nereids from Greek myth, they are not fish women. I use the Liberty license of being able to portray them as basically like mermaid, more like a shark shifter type mermaid thing than a mermaid fish, like the whole Littlest Mermaid. She gets her legs when she's out of the water. When I wrote Spartan Chimera. But that was me taking free creative license. But this idea of these beautiful females that either they use their voice to lure men to their death, they use their beauty to lure men to their death, or they refuse to deal with men and their urges, and they are cursed into something like Medusa, and the sirens were cursed into being serpent women.
And there is a question of whether or not that whole thing of Ursula taking the voice, that's literally part of it in some iterations of what's the difference between them versus Medusa. Whose is worse? Medusa in some cases can still talk. Question mark. In these cases, not always.
Yeah, Medusa, you can't look, you cannot look at her. You know, her biggest curse was the curse of loneliness. And as I when I was doing Spartan Chimera, one of the things I talked about is that the great game keeps repeating, and that's why we have all these different versions of the same myths. Did Medusa, one of the versions of the myth is Medusa runs away and hides in an abandoned temple, spends her whole life praying to Athena, and dies old and alone. One of the versions of the myth is that her gaze turns everyone to stone except her, and she eventually goes crazy from everyone trying to kill her and actually kills and eats her sisters. One of the versions is that she is separated from her sisters, and the heroes kill her and use her to kill Cetus. So yeah, it's basically this idea of the manipulation of a woman makes her evil versus the refusal of a woman to bow makes her evil. And yeah, where's the win? Where's the win-win? Yeah. And it's like, and it's, you know, do the harpies tear you apart because you're evil? Or do they tear you apart because you're a man and you represent the freedom that they will never have? So yeah, all kinds of layers in the back of side of these myths that you look at from different anthropological points. Yeah, I think that's about it for today.
I was going to say, we can keep it a little shorter today. When are we meeting next time would be my question then.
Next time we will be meeting, I believe, is it 1 or 2? Are we going to meet next Thursday or the Thursday after?
I think we are actually, let me double check.
Because next time we're going to be going into winged people. We're going to be this whole idea of humans with wings. And here's the thing. In ancient Assyria, in Babylon and stuff like that, you see all these winged depictions, especially of like Lamassu, the goddess, having wings. There are all these Egyptian gods, goddesses, Nephthys, Ma'at, sometimes, and later Isis were depicted with wings.
Yes, and the origin of kiting with of those mourning animals comes from their like Amduat and whatnot texts for funerary purposes.
Yeah, and so we're going to go into winged people, but here's the thing. In the earliest myths, in the things, there are warnings to avoid the winged ones, to avoid those with wings. And
which is the irony of why I named the winged ones the winged ones. Because if you see them coming, you messed up.
Yeah. There's warnings all the way back to ancient Assyria and ancient Egypt that if the winged ones come, you need to avoid them, offer them sacrifices, or just get out of Dodge. And it's why were ancient peoples so terrified of the winged ones, and how did they go from being representatives of destruction to the angels?
Yes,
that are so common. In early Judaism, angels did not have wings. It wasn't until a couple hundred years after Christ that suddenly angels started having wings. The saints started having wings, and demons started having wings.
Very
so next time we will be talking about wings and things. So whatever day you want to set it for, I'll be more than happy to be here. I apologize for my lack of slides and dates because all my tabs were gone. So I was only able to pull up the few that I had made notes in my handy dandy little note thing right here.
That's okay.
But next time
we showed up, we tried. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Next time we're going to be talking about wings and things. And from there, we will be going on to talk about chimeras around the world. Or do you want the man-like myths?
Oh, we should do chimeras. Come on. It'd be appropriate for the heat of the summer up here.
Yeah, because we'll do wings and things next time, and then we'll do the chimeras around the world. And yeah, the chimeras around the world are very interesting because the chimeric myths or shifter myths, if you will, like the humanoid animals, those actually go back like not just the ancient Nordic myths about the wolfmen, but they go back, like there's a thing called the erotic papyrus of Turin, which it's got some really interesting images in it. But to me, the interesting part is these parts on the trim that show all of these these animals walking upright, talking to people. And it's like every species of animals has a shifter.
Definitely.
And they were talking about them in ancient Egypt. So, yes.
We romance authors did not invent. We're just reborrowing old knowledge, sometimes without even realizing it. So, yeah. We'll see you either in 2 weeks or in 6 weeks, depending on my schedule for the 15th this month. Because otherwise...
so busy.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's...
Trying not to be.
The mythologies, like, is that we do not recognize, because our entire education system is based on Western culture.
It's so European-centric.
They're so rich. And I'm looking forward to the next few weeks because or the next few episodes of Myth Labs, because I find it so fascinating that so many different cultures have so many different interpretations of these myths, like Native American myths about horses and where horses came from are very similar to Mongolian myths about horses and where horses came from. And yeah, I love it.
Thank you for spending some time with us, and we hope to see you here in a couple of weeks. Definitely make sure you are subscribing to Mama Maggie's channel if you are not, and check out her books. And of course, today's Beltane, y'all. Go get yourself some Beltane. Or Bobcat as accordingly.
Still number one for the anthologies on Amazon.
And get your copy.
Very nice book. Very pretty copy. Yes.
It comes with a collection quest if you buy it to get all of our signatures. Enjoy the collection quest.
Yeah.
And above all, everybody, take care of yourselves. You've always been worth it.
You should know only fools tread where the angels fear to go, but you keep trying to get too close. Save myself by turning into stone. So save your judgment, 'cause you just